Hi, I'm Mary Delamatre, and I have a quick presentation about climate change and what we can do to have a promising clean energy future. This image, known as the blue marble, was taken in the last of the Apollo missions and became the most reproduced photograph in all of human history. The climate crisis is now the biggest and most serious challenge that humanity has ever faced. There are only 3 questions remaining to be asked and answered. Must we change? Can we change? And will we change? Let's start with the first question, must we change? The basic problem is that the atmosphere surrounding our planet is not a vast and limitless expanse. It's a very thin line of atmosphere, a shell surrounding our planet. If you drive a car at normal highway speed straight up into the air, you get to the top of the sky in about 5 or 10 minutes, where the greenhouse gases are and above which you cannot breathe. This natural layer of greenhouse gases is important because when the sun's energy comes down to the earth in the form of light, that energy warms up the planet. And some of it escapes by way of infrared radiation. But some of it is trapped, and that's the natural greenhouse gas effect. And that's a good thing because it keeps the temperatures here on Earth at an ideal range that is suitable and really perfect for the life forms that have evolved to be here, including us. The basic problem is we are now thickening this layer of greenhouse gases. We are spewing 110 million tons of man-made heat-trapping global warming pollution into the sky every single day. We're treating it as if it was an open sewer. Of course, that means it gets thicker and more of the outgoing infrared radiation or heat is trapped. And so temperatures go up. That's the problem in a nutshell, but a lot of other problems flow from that. So where does this man-made global warming pollution come from? It comes from a variety of things. Agriculture is one of them, forest management and land use, the thawing of the permafrost, mining, transportation. These are all sources. But the main source by far is the burning of fossil fuels. We still depend on coal, oil, and gas for 80% of all the energy the world economy needs. You can see from this graph that after World War II, it started rising dramatically. The CO2 emissions began to really get outside of all historic boundaries. It's become quite an issue because CO2 is being released faster than at any time since the asteroid hit Yucatan and wiped out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. You can already see that air temperatures on the Earth have been rising dramatically. This past year, we've seen temperature records broken one right after the other. 115 degrees in Paris, 123 in India, 121 in Australia. These are dangerous temperatures. On the shore of the Arctic Ocean in northern Siberia, it got up to 93 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees warmer than it's supposed to be. And the ice at the North Pole started melting. As you can see, the Arctic ice is melting so rapidly, it soon will be completely gone in summertime. % of the whole surface of Greenland, that is the ice that is on Greenland, the glaciers, started melting at the end of July of 2019. For several days, Greenland was losing 10 billion tons of ice per day. It got to 11 billion tons one day for a current average of 234 billion tons per year. All of this melting is the reason for frequent sunny day flooding in Miami and now Miami Beach and now even Miami. There are many cities around the world already experiencing the effects of sea level rise. Now let's step back again and look at the Earth as a whole. This time let's focus on the ocean. When all the global warming heat is absorbed by the Earth's system, more than 90%, actually the scientists say 93% of this extra heat goes into the ocean, and it's penetrating deeper and deeper. And what happens in the ocean doesn't stay in the ocean. Warmer oceans make the storms that come from the ocean much stronger. Here's an example. Hurricane Harvey that devastated Houston and the surrounding area passed over waters of the Gulf of Mexico that were 7 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than normal. And it dumped so much water on Houston and the surrounding areas. In the Pacific, this was Super Typhoon Haiyan that went over ocean waters 9 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than normal and became a devastating typhoon, leaving 4 million climate refugees, killing thousands of people. One of the other consequences of warming up the oceans and the air so much is that it disrupts the water cycle. The evaporation of water vapor off the oceans increases dramatically. The warmer air holds more water, so when it comes over land, we get these tremendous downpours. The scientists are calling them rain bombs now. And so much more of the rainfall and snowfall in winter comes in these one-time storm events that cause more floods. There have been record-breaking floods all around the world that have occurred this year as a result of heavy rainfall. This was in China. This was the state of Kerala in India. Now let's shift gears a little bit. The same extra heat that disrupts the water cycle and increases the water vapor from the ocean also pulls the moisture out of the soil and makes the droughts hit quicker and go deeper and last longer. And drought is having a devastating impact on our world, particularly agriculture. But one example, Chennai, the 6th largest city in India, is just about out of water, and there are many cities that are running this risk. And 97% of Iran was in severe drought in 2018. Now, where you have drought, where you have high temperatures, vegetation dries out along with the land, and you have a lot more fires. You have a lot more lightning strikes in a warmer world. But these fires in the last several years have really raged out of control. In the American West, the fire season is now 105 days longer than it was just a few decades ago. It's basically all year round now. But this is a global phenomenon. Sweden has had an increase in fires, including 8 last year in the Arctic Circle. Even Greenland has been on fire. Now let's talk about how climate change affects our health. Air pollution is a major health issue associated with climate change. Fossil fuels cause global warming, but that same burning of fossil fuels fills the air with this particulate pollution, which causes lung diseases and heart diseases. On average, African Americans and other people of color are more likely to live near industrial activity than the general population. And asthma is twice as common among African American children in the US as among white children. And the number of African American children who die from asthma is 10 times larger than the number of white children that die from asthma. That's totally unacceptable. It has to be changed. Now let's talk about other living things. Almost half of all the marine vertebrates have disappeared in just the last several decades. Half of all land species are at risk of extinction in this century on our watch. That again cannot be deemed acceptable. These consequences of the climate crisis are mounting up. If you try to put a cost on them and add them up, it's just unbelievable. We haven't even talked about the acidification of the ocean, the infrastructure loss, some of these other consequences, but I will mention one more. It's the #1 threat to the global economy, as the World Economic Forum has warned us for each of the last 4 years. But still, governments continue to subsidize the burning of fossil fuels at a rate 36 times larger than the subsidies for renewables. This is an insane policy, and it reflects the continuing political and economic power of the fossil fuel companies. So, must we change? Clearly, yes, we have to change. What we're doing is destroying the conditions that foster the thriving of human civilization, of humanity, and the life forms with which we share this earth. What about the second question, can we change? Well, here is where the good news starts. It's now abundantly obvious that we have the solutions that we need, and that these solutions get better, more effective, more affordable with each passing day. Just take one example. 19 years ago, the best projections for wind energy were that the world would install 30 gigawatts by 2010. Actually, we have beaten that projection 20 times over. 2/3 of all the people in the world now live in regions where the cheapest forms of electricity are solar and wind. And since the cost of solar and wind electricity continues to go down significantly year after year, month after month, we will soon be at nearly 100% of the people in the world being able to turn to renewables as the cheapest form of electricity. The picture is even more dramatic with solar energy. If you look at the projections 17 years ago, they said that maybe the world would install 1 gigawatt per year of solar by 2010. Well, when 2010 arrived, we beat that goal by 17 times over. And last year, we beat that goal, and well, in 2018, we beat that goal by 109 times. It's driven by the continuing decline in the cost of solar cells, the cost of installation, the cost of boxes that contain it, and new business models like pay-as-you-go solar. It's transforming the world. The largest battery in the world was installed by Tesla in South Australia. It's working magnificently, but it won't be the biggest for long. Storage of electricity makes it possible to use solar energy after the sun goes down, and to use wind energy after the wind has stopped blowing for the day or night. And you can see the growth in this capacity. Battery prices continue to go down. That's one of the reasons why this change is so dramatic. That brings us to transportation. In electricity generation, we're seeing the incredible promise of solar and wind growing. But actually, in the US and other countries, the largest source of CO2 emissions is now from transportation. This is traffic in Los Angeles. But there is hope here as well. We're seeing electric cars really come on like gangbusters. The popularity of these vehicles is in part due to the fact that they're fun to drive, and those who have one will tell you that. The cost is now coming down quite quickly. But there are other ways to reduce greenhouse gases. These include planting trees and regenerative agriculture, both of which take carbon out of the air, take CO2 out of the air. Regenerative agriculture describes farming and grazing practices that, among other benefits, reverse climate change by rebuilding soil organic matter and restoring degraded soil biodiversity, both resulting in carbon drawdown and improving the raw water cycle. Project Drawdown, a book showing 100 substantive solutions to reduce global warming, said that by 2050, regenerative agriculture could reduce CO2 by 23.25 gigatons and could save $1.93 trillion with a net cost of $57 billion worldwide. Renewable energy creates jobs by the millions. There are already more than 10 million people all over the world working in this sector. In the United States, for the last 5 years, solar jobs have been the fastest growing category, growing 6 times faster than the average job growth. The second fastest growing job is wind turbine technician. This is part of the economy where millions of new jobs are coming from. This is where we can get sustainable economic growth for the future and put many people to work. So the answer to the second question is yes, we have what we need. We can change. It's getting better all the time. We just need policy on our side. We need policy on our side, and we need to drive these changes more quickly. That brings us up the third question and the final question. Will we change? Clearly the most important question. Well, in spite of some of the news headlines you've read from time to time, we are beginning to change, and we are demonstrating the will to change. In the Paris Agreement just 5 years ago, we saw 195 countries agree to go to net zero emissions by mid-century, just 30 years from now. This year is when all the countries have made a commitment to reconvene and examine how newly cheaper sources of renewable energy, electric vehicles, efficiency improvements will allow them to make even bolder pledges to reduce their emissions by even more. Of course, President Trump in the US announced that he wants to take the US out of the Paris Agreement. But here's something very important to remember. The first day, under international law, the first day the US could actually withdraw from the Paris Agreement is the day after the next presidential election this year. So the American people will still have control over this decision. What happens in that election will have an outsized importance for climate prospects. Now we're seeing hundreds of thousands of people in these giant demonstrations. In fact, on March 15th, 1.4 million young people in 125 countries took part in a coordinated school strike for the climate, and there have been many more demonstrations. Join those who are using their voices, their votes, and their choices in life to fight the climate crisis. Become part of this movement to speak truth to power. Do it like your world depends on it. Because after all, your world does depend on it. Thank you.